Okay, so I'm going to try this video again. Apparently, it wasn't very clear on YouTube. And this worksheet is on Canvas if you wanted to print it out ahead of time. So, the standard form of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So, in a circle, both your x and your y have a squared term. And the center is called HK, just like the vertex of our parabola, and R is the radius, how far out you go to make your circle. So a circle is created by placing a point that's called HK on your two-dimensional paper and then going out a certain distance in every direction. That distance is called R, and then connecting all those points that are that distance from the center. And that's where this formula comes from, because this is measuring the distance from HK, and it's if there was a square root around it, that would look like the distance formula. But since there isn't, it's like we squared the left-hand side, so we had to square the right-hand side. But this is the set of all points that are R units away from the point HK. So if you're given the center and the radius, you're given HK and R. So all you need to do is put x minus h and square it, plus y minus k, which is 0, and square it, equals 4 squared, the radius squared. Or simpler, x squared plus y squared equals 16. That's the circle whose radius is 4 and the center is at 0, 0. Here we would do x minus 0 squared, because h is 0, plus y minus 1/2 squared, because k is 1/2, equals 4/9, because that's r squared. Then we move on to problems where we don't have the center or the radius. We don't have one or the other, or maybe even both. So in this problem, we know the center, so we know h and k, but we don't have the radius. Having a point on the circle, though, gives us an x and a y value that we can temporarily plug in and figure out what r is. So we have the center and we have a point, and we're basically finding the distance between them, which is r, but we're going to do it with the circle formula. So we're going to do x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and that's supposed to equal r squared on the circle. So this is -4 squared, and this is 3 squared, and that equals 16 plus 9, so we've got r squared. But then we're going to go back in with our x and our y, x minus h, y minus k, but minus -2 is plus. Square both of those, and that's supposed to equal this value that we got of 25. And then finally, the most difficult problem when you're not given the center or the radius, you're giving the endpoints of the diameter. So what that looks like is at -4, 1 and 4, 1, those 2 points are on the diameter of my circle. So my circle goes around like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use those 2 points to find the center. And we're going to do that with the midpoint. So the midpoint between these 2 points is going to be the center of our circle. So midpoint formula says take your x values and average them. Do the same with your y values, if you remember those formulas. That was on the test. We're going to get a 0, 0 center. And now we can do the same thing we did up here, and we can use either point. So I'm going to use the positive one. These are both x values, xy values. This is my h, this is my k. So I'll do x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and I can figure out r squared, which is 16 plus 1, or 17. And then I'm going to go back to my x and my y for my formula. And there's my standard form of the circle. All right, moving on to the back of this worksheet. We've got a problem that says, write the equation of a circle in standard form and then complete the squares. Just telling you that's what we're supposed to be doing to do that, complete the square. So standard form, again, looks like this. What we're going to have to do is gather our x terms in one place, leave a little space, and then put our y terms, and then take our number, our constant term, and send it all the way to the other side of the equation. With parabolas, we didn't have another side of the equation, so we just pushed those numbers to the side. Here we're going to push them all the way over, which means they're going to change sign. So I'm going to complete the square on this to make it factor nicely. I'm going to complete the square on this to make it factor nicely. This is a part of my r squared, but whatever I do to the left is going to change this number. So I look at this number 2 and I take half of it and square it, and that tells me what to add. So half of 2 squared is 1. So I'm going to add 1 there, and right away on the other side too, so I stay in balance. Then I'm going to look at y squared plus 6y. I'm going to take half of 6 and square it, so that's 9. I'm going to add 9 here, and right away over here. And now all I've got to do is factor, and I have standard form. So this is going to factor into x minus 1 squared. This is y plus 3 squared. And over here I have the number 25. So this is standard form. I can read the center of my circle as 1, negative 3, like we did with our parabolas. We did the same thing. When you're inside the square, things are backward of what you see in terms of signs. And the radius would be the square root of 25, which is 5. Now I'm not saying plus or minus because it doesn't have a direction. It's just a distance, 5 units. Do the same thing with this next problem. We're going to gather our x's, leave a little space for our y's, send the negative 10 all the way to the other side where it's positive. I'm going to take half of 1 and square it, and that means that I'm going to be adding a fourth. A half squared is a fourth on there to that side and on the right side. Then I'm going to take half of 2 and square it, and that means I'm going to add the number 1 to this side and to this side. So now that I've added the numbers I need to make these factor, we'll factor this. We'll factor this and add up all those numbers. And there's my standard form. My circle has a center of 1/2, negative 1, because this was minus and this was plus. And the radius, now I got to think about it a little bit. The radius squared was 11 1/4. But that's better thought of as 45 quarters. 11 times 4 plus 1. And that way I can take the square root of that, keeping it positive because it's a distance. I have the square root of 45 over 2. Or better, pull a 3 out because this is 9 times 5. And the square root of 9 is 3. And there we go. So that's hopefully a clearer version of the video that I had on there before, and hopefully it'll help you get your homework done.